All right, so here's the agenda we're going to talk about for SmartList. First, we're going to talk about a few, what I like to call gotchas, things we have to be aware of when we are using SmartList as a reporting tool. Then we're going to cover some of my favorite tips and tricks on SmartList. And lastly, we're going to walk through 3 helpful SmartList reports. We're going to look at how they're built. So that's it. So some of the gotchas. When we are using SmartList reports, if you are pulling up customer, like a customer transaction list or a vendor transaction list, there's some things that get included in the totals that maybe you don't want included. One of those being voids. Voids by default, voided transactions by default, show up in the SmartList report. So if you want an accurate SmartList report, you're always going to want to make sure one of your search criteria takes out voided transactions. That way, your report won't be overstated. It won't include things that shouldn't be there. The next gotcha is positive and negative value documents. So if I run a SmartList report and it's a list of vendor transactions, my vendor invoices and my vendor credits both show up as positive numbers. So again, in a SmartList, if you were to total it as is, it's going to be an overinflated number. So you just want to be mindful of those things when you're using SmartList. And then finally, number of records. By default, every SmartList returns the first 1,000 records. So, the first week or two you're using GP, that may be fine, but, your transactions grow past 1,000 pretty quick. So you want to be mindful of that and make sure when your report runs that you have, that you change the default number of records so it includes everything, not just the first 1,000. We'll look at some of this stuff when we jump into GP and do our examples.
Hey, Diane?
Yes?
One other gotcha would be posted and unposted. I know you run into that a lot on financial transactions.
That's a good point, too. So what Bill was saying, for those of you on the phone, another good gotcha is posted versus unposted transactions. If you're looking at financial, like account transaction information, sometimes it's not readily apparent, and unposted items get included by default. So again, that's a good one you want to be mindful of. SmartLists are great tools and great reports, but again, you just want to know what the pitfalls are, so you're actually dealing with accurate data and you're not overinflating your numbers. All right, so some of my favorite SmartList tips and tricks. We're going to look at adding the SmartList icon up in your toolbar. We're going to look at renaming report columns. We're going to look at go-tos, default go-tos, and how to use go-tos on your SmartList. Again, we're going to look at the default number of records on a report. We're going to impose order with multiple sorts. So this is kind of cool. This is one of the lesser-known features or tips. And then I want to mention Excel reports. So I'm going to hop into GP and SmartList now. And please. Oh, this is GP. Okay, good. So everybody can see my screen. All right, so tip number 1. You notice right now I don't have any icons in my toolbar here. So as it stands now, for me to get to SmartList, excuse me, I'm rearranging up here because I'm left-handed. So right now, to get to SmartList, I have 2 clicks. I have to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP and then to SmartList. But I can add an icon up here and make it 1 click instead. So to add the icon, I'm just going to right-click up in my toolbar here, and I'm going to pick Standard. And once I do that, you notice now I have my SmartList icon right here and available. 1 click versus 2. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but you do a lot of clicking throughout the day. So if you can save 1 click here or there, after a while you're saving minutes and hours. All right, so I am going to look at, I created several reports out here, and we're going to look at some of those tips and tricks as we look at some of the reports I created. So the 3 reports that we're going to look at how to create, one is the top 10, and mine is the top 10 customer open balance report, because I want to see out of my customers who owes me the most money. I also created a who, what, when report, and I'm going to pull that one up right now. So who, what, when is basically who is who posted the transaction in GP, what is what kind of transaction is it, and then when is obviously the transaction or the posting date. So here I am in my financial account transaction section. If you want to, FYI, in I think 2015 R2 and now 2016, if you need to expand this area over here to see more, you can right-click in here and increase or decrease the width. So I increased it a little bit so we can see better what my report list is. All right, so my who, what, where report, like I said, is which user posted the transaction, where did it come from, where did it originate, and and you know, what is it? So this report, I'll click on columns to show you. I have added transaction date. I've added the user who posted. So at the financial level, one of the options, one of your user list options is the user who posted. And again, this is nice if you're, looking at any kind of audit trail. You can see who's posted what. You know who to go back to if you have a question. The what is our originating master ID and master name. So the originating master ID and master name, those are going to be your vendor ID or your customer ID, and then your vendor name or your customer name. So you can get that information here at the GL level, again, so you can see what amount hit a particular expense account, what vendor or customer it pertained to, who posted it, and lastly, where. The posting date. When did it hit? So one of my tips was renaming some of these column headings, because GP has some unique naming when it comes to some of our, is that too loud? Am I echoey? Is this too close? Okay. It just sounds echoey in my head. No, nobody. Am I too loud? Okay. For example, originating master name. Now, I've been working in GP for a while, so, conceptually I know what that means. But if I'm looking at expenses and I just want to run a report, maybe I change this to be vendor ID instead. Oh, thank you. I can't spell, apparently, when people are watching me type. Also, originating master name. I want to change that to vendor name. So you can change those right here in the display name when you click on the columns button. Now when I hit OK, you notice now it says vendor name and vendor ID. Some of these obviously aren't vendors, but down here they are. Originating document number, that would be like my vendor invoice number. So again, I can change that heading name if I wanted to. So any questions setting up a report that includes user who posted and vendor or customer name? I think this is a helpful report. A lot of people tend to need to look up that information. We get calls on that stuff. Again, some of the caveats, you want to make sure that we are excluding, voided information, although at the GL level you would see an in and out at this, so not so important. We'd probably want to exclude unposted information, perhaps depending on what you needed the report to do. Hang on, I want to make this just a little bit smaller. And then down here at the bottom, let's not forget, can you guys see that? It's getting cut off. Let me. Oh, there, now you can. Yeah, the bars, it's fine now. Notice down at the bottom here, first 1,000 records. So if my report says first 1,000 records, I know that there's more than 1,000 lines in this report. And so I want to go to click on the search button, and I want to change the maximum records for this particular report. I'm lazy. I don't want to guess at how many records there are, so I always fill that field with 9s. And then GP will figure out how many records there are from there. So because I already had this SmartList saved, to save my changes, I would just go back to my favorites button and click modify. And now it's going to save my search. It's going to save the maximum records. It's going to save my column names that I've changed. Bless you. All right, so I'm going to close that one. The next report I want to talk about is an unreconciled bank transaction report. Again, it's something we get a fair amount of questions on, is, bank reconciliations and transactions, related to that. So I have created a SmartList out here under bank transactions. So I'm going to click on the plus sign next to that. So here I created a SmartList, and I'll click on the columns in a minute to show you. But let's look at the layout. So I have checkbook ID. Then I have the source document. So you notice I have CMTRX. Those are cash management or bank module transactions. And then I have PM Pay, which are payables management checks, basically, payments. And then you can see the transaction type whether it's a check or an increase or decrease adjustment. I have the GL posting date. I have the paid to or received from, field, description, and then the amount. So I created that by, I always start with the asterisk, you know, just to give me some information in bank rec. So I typically start out with this asterisk report if I'm going to create a new one from scratch. So I started here, and I went up to columns, and I clicked the add button, and then I thought about some of the items that I wanted on here. And so I added CM transaction type. Remember that said check, increase adjustment, decrease adjustment. So I wanted that. I want, I already have checkbook amount. So, oh, I wasn't supposed to close. So I've got this. I need the paid to or received from. So you can highlight multiple columns. I'm using my control key to select multiple items at once. So if you use your shift key, it'll do a range of columns to pull in, or I can use my control key and pick individual columns that I want to add to my report. And I want, do I have date in here? Yeah. So I think that's all I need. So once I get the columns that I want in my report, then I can come here. Again, I can rename my columns to make them, you know, more user-friendly for me. And I can move the columns around. So for example, I want the transaction type to be up near the checkbook ID. And I want the amount to be at the end of the report. So you can modify this any way you want. I'm going to remove that one. And then I'll run it, and I'll look at it and go, okay, this is pretty good. And then from here, I want to put some search criteria on, because I don't want all of my checkbooks. I don't want, you know, since this is an unreconciled report, I only want unreconciled information. So I'll go to search. So here I'll run this report again and show you. So here in the search criteria, I have voided equals no. So I'm excluding all of my voided transactions. Reconciled equals no. I want to see just the items that have not yet been reconciled. And then I have my checkbook filter on here. So one of the cool things, and this was another tip and trick I wanted to talk about, is the order by. So there's a button down here. So GP SmartList by default, let me close this for a minute. SmartList by default, I can sort and order by any one column at a time, right? But if I click on the search button and click on order by, I can select multiple columns to sort and order by. I'm not limited to just one. So this is kind of cool, because a lot of times I want to order by date and then by amount, or I want to order by customer or vendor and then amount. So you know, in Excel you can do multiple, you know, kind of sorts. And so this gives you the same flexibility in SmartList. Again, I should expand my maximum records here because my report ended at 1,000.
I got a question on that. So
Yeah.
Is there a way to save that so that it's not always defaulting to 1,000?
That is a great question. Yes, there is, Anne. Yes, there is. I am here to tell you. So let me minimize, and I was going to get to this, but we'll go now. So you're right. If you've been using GP for a while now, which most of you guys have, probably most of your reports, if not all of them, hit that 1,000 max. And so rather than change it and save it on each report individually, I can go to the administration page in GP, and under the setup section, I can scroll down and pick SmartList options. And here, I can pick by category, accounts, customers. So I would probably pick all of these and change the maximum records here on all of them in this window. You can also, in here, change the default go-to view. So you know when you're on a SmartList record and you double-click, that window that opens, that's your go-to, your default go-to. So you can change that here in the settings so that it drills into a different field. And then you can also, aside from the maximum records, change the default columns that show up in some of your just asterisk reports. So thank you, Anne, for asking that.
For the reports that you've already written, so that you change that doesn't update, right?
No, it does not. Drat.
Yeah, wrong answer.
It would have been the right answer had you been told that right at the beginning.
Right.
Then it would have been good.
And we have a question from David Can.
Okay.
Online, it's I created a SmartList the other day in SmartList Builder, and think I created a Cartesian product situation because the data repeats itself hundreds of times per item number. Not sure how to debug the problem.
Yeah, that's one of those where that's the link between the tables. So with SmartList Builder, so right now we're just looking at GP standard SmartList. There is an add-on product which enhances SmartList, which is called SmartList Builder. And one of the features of SmartList Builder is you can combine multiple tables and multiple kind of report information into one SmartList Builder report. So it sounds like when you link the tables together, you can do like this field equals this field, or there's like a left outer or right outer join, and it sounds like maybe it's set to equal and it needs to be one of the left or right outer joins. Right, Sean?
If it's repeating records over and over and over again, it's probably because they don't have the key fields linked to one another.
At all? Oh.
It could be like
Okay, so Sean.
Item to item. It
Yep.
could be sales transaction number to sales transaction number. It could be just a simple linking of the table that they don't have matched up. They could have, where it's sales document not linked to the item.
Right, okay. So Dave, Sean's also saying it could be that the key fields are not linked at all. So you want to pick a key field, item number, link to item number, sales document to sales document, customer to customer, so that there is some kind of link. And maybe that would alleviate the issue. Any other questions so far with SmartList? Yes, ma'am.
It's the field comparison. When you go into the columns like that into search, what is that field comparison button underneath that? You go into search.
Yep. Sean, what is the field comparison button?
So field comparison means that it lights up another field from the SmartList to compare to one another. So in your last field there, you would have one field being the journal entry number, and the next field could be the originating transaction number. all it does is instead of you typing in a free-form value or something, you're basically comparing one field within the SmartList to another field in the SmartList. So like if you, a good example is show me any customer sales transactions where the default customer or the primary customer shipped to address ID was not used on a sales transaction. So you could do that in a sales transaction SmartList and do the field comparison.
Okay.
Grab the ship to address ID compared to the primary ship to address ID from the customer master.
Perfect. So the third report I created is down here under customers. And I created a customer balance. So this is like my top 10 customer open balances. And I did add the aging buckets because I want to look at who owes me the most money and how old is the, you know, like our first guy owes me 80 grand, but 68,000 of it's current, so I'm not as worried about him. But, you know, maybe this guy, Vancouver Resorts, we're at 60,000 and it's all old. So it's just a quick way to look at, you know, some customer data, open balances, and see what's what out there. So how many people use SmartLists daily? Okay, good. Good, good. Because like I said, it's a great tool. It's a great way to get information out. Oh, I know. One thing, the go-tos I didn't talk about. So here I am in my customer balance. And if I double-click on a particular customer, right now it takes me, the default go-to is it goes back to the customer maintenance window. But I can also highlight a particular customer and use the go-to button and go somewhere else instead. So I'm not limited into, if I want to click and see the customer inquiry instead, I can do that using that go-to button up at the top. So that's what that does.